Huge thanks to Sean Davis for all the help with porting, tuning, and other things. Basically, what I'll be doing in this video so far would be to port the cylinder for maximum performance, raising the power band and more RPM. According to Sean, you can get about 15 horsepower out of it, and up to 14 to 15,000 RPM. What?
That sounded awesome, guys.
Well, obviously you'll want to upgrade the crank to handle all that. I'm sure it'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen? And I blew it up.
It happened. I'd say that's normal.
Oh no, I think I blew it up. Shut up. Shut up. Avenger 85 cylinders usually has these port timings and durations, and once ported and opened up more, you'll have a lot more fun and satisfaction. There's so much hidden potential. Well, that goes for other bicycle engines as well as minerals. Let's go over the parts and tools to use. I have a Smolik Performance CNC head for better cooling and higher compression, a 2005 KX85 dirt bike pipe for more power and a more aggressive power band head, a G2 reed valve for extra performance and better fuel efficiency, a bigger 24mm carburetor for extra top-end performance, and a BI-CDI for adjusting the timing curve for extra performance. And then finally, some porting bits and tools. Oh yeah, and some measuring tools, I forgot. There are many different carburetors you can use, but from what I understand, the bigger the carburetor, the more top end you will get, but also harder to tune. It can't be that hard though, I don't think. There are many different pipes you can use, but if you want more power, over 12 to 15 horsepower, you're gonna have to use some big 85cc dirt bike pipes. They're cheap though, used on eBay. A YZ85 dirt bike pipe will have a more broad or wider power band and still make up to 12 to 15 horsepower and over rev of about 12 to 13,000 RPM, possibly even more depending on sprocket, rider, gearing, etc. There are also different and better reed valves you can use. I chose this one a long time ago because it was cheap and figured I could do modifications to it. You can always swap the reed cage for better flow and stuff. The reed pedal's thickness matters. For more top end or more RPM, then thicker reed pedals is recommended, I was told. If you want to use a bigger carburetor, you want to make sure that your intake setup as a whole can support the amount of flow. As for the porting and measuring tools, I have a Dremel tool, a die grinder with bigger bits to speed things up, and a flex shaft grinder with a foot pedal, and a 90-degree elbow grinder off eBay for the transfer ports, obviously. These are the bits that I use with 1/8 and 1/4 shafts for the die grinder and the Dremel. I use the big ones for eating a lot of material nice and fast. And then to go slow, and or to raise the exhaust port, for example, I use the smaller bits on a Dremel. And then for transfer ports, I mostly use the tiny ones. I'm trying to get better at porting, so I try different things. Also, if you really want to eat up a lot of material nice and fast, then you might want this single cut bit. Of course, if you want higher quality bits, then you simply pay more. I would do that, but I don't know, man. I am a skeptical little bit. Before we start this, I'm gonna show you a short clip of how a two-stroke with a pipe works, so you can better understand why or how changing the port timings affects the power band. Also, I'm not an expert in any of this. I learned more about two-strokes from handbooks and research. Just Google research in general. The first stroke is intake and compression. The second stroke is power and exhaust. The piston travels up, creating crankcase vacuum, sucking in the mixture, and at the same time, up top here, it creates compression and then combusts, pushing the piston down, creating crankcase pressure, charging the mixture through the transfer ports. One stroke, two stroke. Now the pipe is doing most of the work actually. Okay, let's say it's making peak power at 9,000 RPM. Exhaust port opens, creating a burst of pressure or pulse. A positive pulse travels through the pipe, and in the diffuser section, this creates a negative wave, pulling the spent exhaust gases out of the cylinder, and the fresh mixture out of the transfer ports, filling up the cylinder and escaping the exhaust port. The positive pulse is still traveling all the way through, and by the time it has reached the end, the piston is now at BDC. the wave is reflected by this baffle cone, comes back as a negative pulse all the way back, pushes the mixture back into the cylinder before the exhaust port closes back up, basically supercharging it. And that is how it makes a power band. Resonance. Of course, this doesn't make more power at a lower RPM because the wave speed is simply too fast for the engine speed. Well, at least that's how I view it. So, that being said, basically, if you raise the exhaust port, the cylinder, increase the stroke, shorten the pipe, or all of the above, this raises the power band. Because the exhaust port opens earlier, the waves come back earlier. It's turning higher RPM to be in resonance again from, say, 9,000 to 11,000. It's that simple. Fascinating, isn't it? God, I love the nature of two-strokes. If you want the pipe to hit earlier, like at a lower RPM, you simply just have to use a longer pipe and or less exhaust port duration. I'm gonna use a degree wheel to measure the port timings, durations, and blow down and then mark the degrees I want ported to. Make sure the cylinder is held down tight, and please use an old head gasket to save the cylinder deck from damage. I use a copper wire as a pointer in this location by preference. To confirm true TDC, I open the exhaust port very slightly on both sides and then equal it out multiple times. $98, $97.5, $90, $95, $6, $7, $8. And now I know the exhaust port timing. It's 98 from TDC to exhaust opening. Now I need to find out the exhaust port duration. There are two ways to do this, math or count. Very simple, 98 minus 180 times 2 equals 164. A port duration is how long a port is open for in one crank rotation. 80, 80, 160, 1, 2, 1, 2, 164. Same thing for the transfer ports. 90, 100, 110, 120, 125, 6, 7, 8, 128. And then to calculate the transverse duration, this is how I count or do the math in my head. 128, go to 130, ignore 2 degrees, 50, 50, 100, 102, 104, but to make sure. Okay, and now blow down. Blow down is exhaust opening to transverse opening. Very simple, subtract the timings. And then the intake port duration. To be honest, well, it's simple, but I'm gonna use a reed valve anyway, so who cares about that? 40mm stroke, 89mm rod. Now that I have the stock numbers written down, I'm going to mark up the degrees that I want ported to. Remember, if you add more port durations, you raise the power band so the pipe comes on or kicks in later at a higher RPM, adding some more RPM up top, and maybe some more peak horsepower. But keep in mind, it's a trade-off for low end, so you get more top end, but less low end. Now here are some numbers you can try. Basically, if you want peak horsepower at a lower RPM, and only turn like 10 to 11,000 RPM, and still have decent low-end torque, depending on the pipe, then use these lower numbers. Or if you want peak horsepower at a higher RPM, just so you can get more RPM and go faster, especially on a smaller sprocket, then use these higher numbers. You can get higher RPMs on a big sprocket, like 13 to 14,000 RPM or more, and possibly still hit 60 to 70 miles an hour. What? And maybe even like 80 on 32T or maybe 28T. Who knows, but maybe I'll be the first ever to hit those numbers on a China doll motor. Yeah, I'm gonna die, aren't I? If you widen up the transfer ports, that means more fuel charge. Adding a boost transfer adds more fuel, aka more power. A reed valve allows us to do this. Anyways, I'm gonna start at about 180 exhaust duration. As you can see, I already widened up the exhaust port up to about, I think it was 68% of the bore. You can widen up the exhaust port up to about 70% of the bore. If you go any wider, you might actually break holes through the stud holes, so be careful. If you want to widen up the transfer ports, it's very important that you don't alter the angles, at least not too much. For the most part anyway, I'll show you in a bit. Also, if you want to add boost and third transfers, then you don't need to do this. The transfer angles is important. They serve a purpose. You want the transfers to feed fuel towards the intake, not the exhaust, because otherwise you're losing power and fuel. It's the reason why people say 110cc cylinders are garbage. And then to add a reed valve, you'll want to add a boost transfer to make a difference. And then third transfer. Ideally, you would want a windowed piston. And the third transfer down to this level here, or line, I mean. But Sean says that every windowed piston, 272 XP pistons that he has tested on, always becomes a grenade at high RPMs, especially at 11 to 12,000 RPM. So yeah, no thanks. I decided to do what he called a trench port all the way down to the case. Well, I deleted footage on my DJI camera by accident. Oh well. Do not use too high RPMs, and don't apply too much pressure, and don't keep it in the same spot. Well, for the most part, take it slow, be patient, and clean your bits more often, and use your bits wisely. Okay, so basically, since I'm doing the boost and third transfers with a reed valve, I'm hooking that wall angle to redirect it away from the intake side. It's kind of funny because I did this by accident, but Sean said I'm doing it right. Well, I got lucky. Best thing about these cylinders is that they are so cheap, like 35 bucks. So if you mess up or if you want to try again, well, get a new one. However, I did mess up a few times. I damaged the cylinder liner, but oh well, it'll still run. So I noticed that the bit will start catching or chattering if I hold it like this. So to stop that, I have to change the angle. This is my first time porting the transfer ports, but honestly, I think I did alright. I could do better, way better, but good enough. Either way, Sean told me to use toothpicks to verify the transfer's angles, and I came up with this idea using a copper wire as straight as possible, and then bend it into a pointer, and it seems to work pretty well. Either ways, the angles looks pretty good, especially the hooked angles. And the transfer roofs. Basically, you would want the A transfer wall by the exhaust to be pointed to the center of the bore. As for the hooked D transfer walls, maybe you could do something like this. Okay, there are different exhaust port shapes you can try. Basically, if you want a little bit more wider power band, make the roof more oval shaped. Or if you want a little bit more peaky power band, make the roof more flat. Obviously not completely flat. If you want a little bit extra power, then this may be the way to go. Just be careful if you make it completely flat or whatever, then, well, bye-bye your engine, because of possible ring snag. So maybe add some curve to it and in the corners. It's finally time to add boost and third transfers. Also, you should line up the boost transfer roof with the transfer roofs. Trent said he tried 45 degrees of angle of the boost transfer roof, and it seems to make more power, so that's what I went for. And I guess I came up with a stupid idea using an angle finder on the Dremel, and yes, I made sure it was level on the Dremel housing. But hey, it seems to work. I also widened up the intake port to support the flow of a 24mm carburetor or bigger. Oh, nice. And then it was time to mess with the reed valve and see what I can do with it. I noticed the screws were not tightened all the way in, and there was a big gap between the cage and the pedals. Turns out that the surface area is not completely flat, so I had to try to fix it. So, did it really help? Damn. Yeah, I don't think these are good. Well, this one maybe, I don't know, but this, it can only open up so much. I don't think this is good for 24mm. I thought the pedals were a little bit too stiff, so I swapped them out to my old minerally reed pedals. Better than nothing. A little bit of flutter, but it should open up more at high RPM. Yep. Not the first time it has happened. Yep.